What if I told you that the greatest empire the world had ever seen, an empire that ruled for centuries, stretched across 3 continents and gave us roads, aqueducts, and law, came crashing down in a single day? The Western Roman Empire didn't vanish quietly. It fell with fire, with betrayal, with a teenage emperor watching helplessly as his city was torn apart. But was it really one day that ended Rome? Today, we're going back to the year 476 AD, the so-called fall of Rome, to uncover what really happened when the eternal city lost its crown, and why the truth is far more complex than you've been told. Stick around, because by the end of this video, you'll understand not just how Rome fell, but why it never truly died. Before we talk about how it fell, let's talk about what was. The Roman Empire was once unstoppable, the symbol of civilization, power, and order. For over 500 years, it ruled from the Atlantic to the Middle East. The city of Rome itself was a marvel: temples, palaces, bustling forums, and grand arenas. But by the 5th century, cracks had already spread through the empire like vines in old stone. Capital of the Western Empire had moved to Ravenna. Rome, the heart of the empire, was no longer even its political center. Emperors came and went, often as puppets of generals, warlords, or foreign powers. Civil wars drained resources, invasions pushed the empire to its knees. And in the East, the Eastern Roman Empire, here what we call the Byzantine Empire, was still going strong from its capital in Constantinople. The empire hadn't fully fallen, just half of it was bleeding out. But the West was on life support. For decades, barbarian tribes had been moving into Roman territory. These barbarians weren't all the savage hordes Roman writers made them out to be. Many were refugees displaced by war or seeking better land. But Rome no longer had the strength to hold its borders. Visigoths sacked Rome in 410. The Vandals followed in 455. Each invasion didn't just damage the empire, it shattered its image of invincibility. By the mid-400s, the Western Roman Empire had become a shell of its former self. Its military was a mix of mercenaries and tribal allies. Its emperors were figureheads. Real power rested in the hands of generals and foreign kings. And then came a man named Odoacer. In 475, the Western Roman throne was held by a teenager, Romulus Augustulus. His name echoed 2 legends of Rome: Romulus, the city's mythical founder, and Augustus, its first emperor. But the symbolism was cruelly ironic. Romulus wasn't chosen for greatness. He was installed as a puppet by his father, Orestes, a powerful general who had once served Attila the Hun. But Orestes made a dangerous mistake. He promised land to his barbarian allies, mostly Germanic mercenaries, and then refused to deliver. One of those leaders, Odoacer, had enough. In 476, Odoacer marched on Ravenna. Orestes was captured and executed. The teenage emperor Romulus Augustulus was spared, reportedly because of his youth and good looks, and sent into exile. And just like that, there was no emperor in the West. So is this the day Rome fell? That's what most history textbooks say. The date, 476 AD, has become shorthand for the fall of the Western Roman Empire. But here's where things get interesting. Odoacer didn't destroy Rome, he didn't burn its cities or erase its culture. In fact, he sent the imperial regalia, the symbols of power, back to Constantinople. It was his way of saying, we don't need a Western emperor anymore. One emperor in the East is enough. Rome didn't fall in fire. It fell in paperwork. And even then, life went on. Odoacer ruled Italy as king, but in many ways he preserved Roman institutions. Roman senators still met. Roman laws were still used. Latin was still the language of the courts. So if you had lived through that time, as a farmer, a merchant, or even a Roman noble, you might not have realized an empire had just fallen. It didn't feel like the end of the world. It felt more like changing managers. The truth is, Rome didn't die in 476. It had been dying slowly, painfully. For over a century, here's what really killed the Western Roman Empire. Overexpansion. Rome grew too large to govern effectively. Too many frontiers, too many enemies, economic decline, heavy taxation, inflation, and a reliance on slave labor created a fragile economy. Internal corruption, power struggles, and weak leadership plagued the empire. Military decay. The Roman legions of Caesar's time were long gone. Mercenaries and tribal auxiliaries filled the ranks. Cultural shifts, Roman identity had blurred. Barbarians were not always outsiders. Many had grown up within the empire's borders. And finally, Rome didn't collapse because of one enemy. It collapsed from within. 476 was just the moment when the scaffolding finally gave way. So what came next? The Eastern Roman Empire, Byzantium, continued for nearly 1,000 more years. It preserved Roman law, Roman titles, and Roman pride. In the West, the so-called barbarian kingdoms rose, but they didn't reject Rome. They absorbed it. Many Germanic rulers styled themselves as Roman heirs. Latin remained the language of the church. Roman architecture, engineering, and governance echoed through the centuries. Even Charlemagne, centuries later, would be crowned emperor of the Romans. And perhaps most telling of all, no civilization since has ever truly let go of Rome. Whether it was the Renaissance, the Enlightenment, or even modern politics, Rome remains the shadow behind the throne. So what really happened the day Rome fell? A teenage emperor lost his throne. A barbarian king took power. The Western crown was sent back to Constantinople. But the truth is, Rome had already fallen long before that day, and yet, in another sense, it never truly fell. Its roads became the veins of Europe. Its laws became the backbone of nations. Its language, Latin, lived on in science, religion, and politics. Rome didn't die, it evolved. It scattered into the roots of everything we now call Western civilization. And maybe that's the real lesson of history. Empires rise, empires fall, but their echoes last far longer than their thrones. Thanks for watching. Think the fall of Rome was wild? Wait until you see how a tribe of nomads from the steppes of Mongolia rose to conquer the largest land empire in history in just 100 years. No cities, no writing system, no problem. Click the video on screen to watch how the Mongols conquered half the world in 100 years. It's a story of strategy, survival, and one of the most unstoppable forces history has ever seen. Let's keep the journey going. And if you haven't already, subscribe and hit the bell so you never miss a moment of epic history.